things that I have prayed and just would give anything to see in 5 years, I've seen it now in 4 weeks. By day 2 of life, Luke started to go into a coma. The first 6 months of Luke's life were very traumatic, to say the least. He was in the hospital every week. We would get out for a couple days and be back. His pneumonia was just never really managed. For 6 months, he stayed at a brain damaging level. Every time I would see a doctor, they just pick one diagnosis to fixate on. So Luke has been given a diagnosis of CPS1, he's had a liver transplant, metabolic stroke, cerebral palsy from the stroke, and we also got an autism diagnosis. There were many nights that I would stay up crying, thinking, what can I do for him? Because I feel like everything I'm doing here is not working. Dr. Crawford takes us back, and he was looking over Luke, talking to him. He didn't treat Luke like any of his diagnosis, not one of them. He was looking at Luke to treat Luke what works best for him. This is a place of miracles. So before, I could never get Luke to dress himself. And the other morning I had his clothes laid out for him, and I was in the bathroom getting ready, and I walked back into the bedroom and he had already gotten himself dressed. He was completely nonverbal from the stroke, so never said a word, but he has started to talk. I was like, you get to go to clinic today and see all your friends. And I was like, are you ready to go now? And he said, yeah. And now he's trying, every night he's trying to sound out words. He actually sits at night and in bed and wants me to read to him. He's never done that before. He was not ever using utensils. And I've made videos of him since being here of eating his first cup of ice cream, literally from Chick-fil-A, because he can do it now. I just have so much hope for Luke's future, and just seeing the things that he's done in 4 weeks. I can't imagine what it's going to look like for him when we get home and we're doing home care. Who knows, maybe a year from now I will be sending y'all T-ball pictures and whatever he wants to do.
You're doing awesome, dude.
This place is restoring health, restoring hope to families, and truly changing lives, not only of the patients, but of the families as well.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming to this talk. My name is Ethan Cowan. I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner. My colleague Erin was supposed to be here, but her sister-in-law is in the process of dying, so she's still in Phoenix, and she wishes she could be here, I'm sure. We did plan the talk as a collaboration, so some of these slides I'm going to nail, and some of them I'm going to improvise, so we'll see how it goes. This is Erin. I'm over there. You'll see I'm working with Arya, who's right here, which is kind of cool. And in the middle is Feldenkrais, who's the guy who invented this kind of work that we do. The talk is called Empowering Kids and Parents Through the Quality of Human Touch. So we're going to just be talking about empowerment, power. That kind of struck me as an idea that it would be interesting to talk about. How can we empower these kids? How can we empower ourselves when we're working with these kids? So, oh yeah, and I should say, the message is that the main power that we have in all these situations is to learn. So, sometimes people give a presentation, they're like, you're going to make you wait until the end for the payoff. I just want to tell you at the beginning, the whole message is the way that we empower the kids and the way that we empower ourselves is by figuring out how to learn. So that, we'll talk about that in a lot of different ways throughout the talk. So, I'm going to start by talking about the guy, Feldenkrais. So the name, some of you know already, but in case you don't, rhymes with nice. So it's Feldenkrais, rhymes with nice. So he's born in 1904. That was a long time ago at this point. the main thing I want to say about that is at that point in history, humans, we did not know very much about the brain, about how the brain works. You know, from a technical perspective, like what Dr. P was talking about. We didn't know all of the little details. But Feldenkrais, through his life, kind of came to some ideas about the brain and how the brain works that were really practical. And so when we talk about neuroplasticity, that's another way of talking about learning. And he was really interested in learning. He did a lot of martial arts, which was really important in his learning about how to move. And then at a certain point in his life, his knee was totally bummed. Like he could not walk, and he was trying to figure out like what he could do. And he went to a surgeon, and the surgeon was like, well, yeah, we can do knee surgery, and it's probably a 50% chance that it's gonna really work, and a 50% chance it's not gonna do anything, and you're just gonna be like crippled. And he was like, I don't really like those chances. So I forgot to say, he was a science dude. So he's like an engineer. He did a lot of really interesting work with radioactivity, like in the early part of the 20th century. So he had a very kind of technical mind. And so after the surgeon was like, surgery is, give or take, a coin toss basically. He's like, let me think this through. Let me try to figure out for myself how is this working? What's really going on here? And what he figured out was that and Dr. P talked about this in his talk too, he could actually think through, what is it that's giving me this problem? It's probably that I'm using my muscles in a weird way. And I can probably figure out how to work with myself so that I use those muscles differently. Oh, muscles, those are actually controlled by the brain. So that's the main insight that I want to kind of share with you, is that he figured out that you can use movement to change the way that your brain works so that you can get yourself out of problems instead of depending on somebody to kind of go in there and cut you up. Sometimes, you need somebody to go in there and cut you up. I'm not saying you don't, but for certain types of problems, like the one that he had with his knee, found that it was really helpful to just actually use awareness. And again, neuroplasticity, but just think of that as learning. He was like, oh, we can learn our way out of this situation. So just some background information. Feldenkrais was the teacher of Anat Banyel. So sometimes you might hear about ABM, Anat Banyel Method. So he was Anat Banyel's teacher. And there are other people who, studied with Feldenkrais who then branched off and have done their own thing. And so that's just to say all of this is kind of under an umbrella that's like, use movement to help people's brains. And there are different marketing strategies, different people have different ways of, but I'm just saying we're all sort of doing the same thing, so don't get confused about that. Okay. So there are two ways that we do, well, three ways. I'm giving a talk right now, so that's one of the ways of doing Feldenkrais, but then there are two ways to actually do it. One is like a group class, where people are lying down on the floor usually, and there's a teacher who's giving verbal instructions about, okay, now lift your shoulder, and now do this, and blah, blah, blah. So we're gonna do some of that in here, and you're gonna experience it, and that's gonna be cool. The other way to do it is hands-on, and that is called functional integration. We have these kind of trademark names. Originally, historically, these were called group classes. That was called individual classes. He had to, at some point in the 70s, when he was like, okay, this is becoming a thing, he had to come up with some trademarkable things, like, oh, this is what I do. But group classes, individual classes. And the individual work is really great for the kids because it does not require, verbal, you're not expecting the person that you're working with to do the things. You can kind of use your hands, use your sense of the person to help them in the learning process. And we're gonna do a little bit of group class here, and then I'm also gonna work with Arya a little bit so you can get a kind of a flavor of what the individual work is like. So, okay, so I'm gonna introduce this question or topic of a habit. So this is really important in our work. We think a lot about what a habit is, because a lot of times when people are in trouble, it's because they have a habit that is somehow damaging to themselves. The interesting thing about habits is that none of us are born with our habits. We all develop our habits. And we all develop our habits through learning. I'm going to keep harping on learning. The way that happens, or happened for all of us when we were babies, was that we did a whole bunch of little trials and we made a whole bunch of little errors. And over time, we built up this sense of like, oh, well, I know that if I do this thing, then I can expect this result. I'm talking about movement specifically, but it's also your interactions with people. It's also people, your parents, your caregivers. School, eventually, you kind of build habits there. But what I'm trying to say is, we didn't come into this life with any kind of pre-programmed stuff. I mean, we have reflexes. We all know about reflexes. So there are some, but for the most part, humans, compared to lots of other animals, are like relatively blank slate. If you compare a human where it takes like maybe a year for a kid without a brain injury to learn how to walk, compare that to a giraffe that just like falls out of their mom and then within like 5 minutes they're just like up on their legs and ready to walk along with the crew. Like, humans, learning is a really important thing because that's how we develop our ability to do the things that we do. By the time you get to our age, you're just a complex of habits where most of the time you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're just like, oh, I want to raise my arm, so I don't even think about it. I just do it. What's interesting is that because we learned all of this stuff in the first place, it's possible to kind of get into a learning state again. Even though we have habits, we have ways of kind of reintroducing ourselves into that learning state where things that are not habitual can become accessible. A lot of times you'll reject something that's not habitual because you're just like, oh, that feels weird. Like, I don't want to do that, or that's not how I do it. Or it's kind of in conflict with who you think you are. You're like, that's not me. But a lot of what we're doing in the Feldenkrais method is figuring out ways to help people experience non-habitual things in a way that feels safe and kind of acceptable. So we'll talk more about that too as it goes. This quote is kind of interesting. What I'm after isn't flexible bodies, but flexible brains. What I'm after is to restore each person to their human dignity. So this is another, I'm reintroducing the Feldenkrais kind of worldview is like, the brain is the important thing. I think this conference is doing a great job of kind of, exposing us that idea a lot. But he's the flexible body might be the thing you're thinking is the goal. You know, I want the spasticity to go away, and it's true that is what we want. But we're saying, okay, the way to do that is to make the brain a little bit more flexible, and that means being able to introduce something that's not habitual and have the brain go, oh wait, I think like maybe I could use that. So, does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so empowerment, that's kind of the theme that I'm talking about. I have these, this one is AI, you can probably tell. This is just some acorns. So the idea with all of this is like, we can kind of plant some new information somewhere in the brain by, again, I'm talking about like suggesting a little thing like, oh, your body might feel different if you do something this way. And what we're hoping is that the learning process will kind of take those things and allow them to grow in the brain so that you come up with new possibilities, new potential. So, you know, the word potency, that's another way of talking about power. Potency is like, you meet somebody who's really potent, you're like, wow, that person can like do what they want to do in the world. Feldenkrais wrote a book about the potent self. It's kind of a weird word, but if you think about it, it's also part of potential. So one thing we're doing in this is we're trying to find out the potential of the kids or the potential of ourselves. Okay, so let's see. There's me. There's Erin. There's me and Erin working with the same kid at the same time. This is something we've been experimenting with a little bit, and it's super fun. It's super interesting. That's Arya. Okay, so I have this kind of dorky thing up here, skill power versus willpower. A lot of times when we think about change, we think, I'm going to have to try really hard if I want to change. I'm going to have to use some serious willpower. Like, you ever try and do a diet or, I don't know, with fill in the blank for yourself, but I'm going to have to really, gird my loins to make this thing happen. And that's something that's kind of present in our culture a lot. We think a lot about like, oh, if you just really stick with it and really just push through, someday everything could be different. I think there are places for that, but I want to introduce this other kind of power that I think is maybe sometimes less appreciated, but maybe more important, which is skill power. Skill power is the development of a new ability that you didn't have before. And the way that works is that you need to go into a learning state to develop a skill. So instead of trying to just like force something to happen, you actually try a little bit softer, and you get into a state of mind, you do and also the kids do, where you're kind of starting to feel like, oh, this is a little bit possible. I think there might be something here. And over the course of time, you can develop new skills that actually feel easy. That's one thing that we really like in this method, is that we're looking for things that feel easy, that feel acceptable to somebody, and we think that has a really good chance of actually becoming part of somebody's life in a way that's meaningful, going forward. Okay, so this is a little illustration that I made. Can anybody tell what this is? Shoulder. Wow, that was fast. Okay, yeah, it's a shoulder. Way to kill the mystery. No. Okay, so your shoulder, if you didn't know, it's kind of actually an interesting joint, because it's this place where these three bones meet. So this purplish thing is, that's the length of your arm from your elbow to your shoulder. This scapula is kind of the wing bone that's on the back. And then this is your clavicle. This is the thing that goes like from here to there. Okay, so we're going to do a little experiment where we're going to work with the shoulder. And what I'm hoping is that this will give you like a felt sense of some of the things that I've been talking about. I know this week I heard some people say, like, by the end of this weekend, you're going to have so much information in your head, you're just going to be like, what happened? What do I do with all this? I'm hoping that this will give you some kind of like nonverbal information, something that you can actually feel for yourself. So we'll see. You can kind of tell me if it works or not. So if you wouldn't mind, just feel how you're sitting right now. Don't change it, but just feel how you're sitting in your chair. And kind of notice that, okay, maybe we could call this habitual. You didn't think about putting yourself here. You're just kind of here in your chair. And maybe you're sitting more on one side of your butt or the other side. Maybe, one of your feet is touching the floor. Maybe both of your feet are touching the floor. Maybe if you feel how you're leaning against the back of the chair, you can sense there's like a pattern of contact there, right? So just before you change anything about how you're sitting, just feel how you're sitting. And then make a little adjustment for yourself to make yourself a little bit more comfortable. Okay, good. Great, so isn't that interesting that your habitual way of doing things might not be the most comfortable way of doing things? So now, do another little adjustment. This is comfortable. Is there some way that you can make yourself a little more comfortable? Maybe you found it on the first try. Maybe there's something else that you could change. Okay, interesting. So now bring your attention to your left shoulder. So when I say bring your attention to your left shoulder, I just mean feel your left shoulder. You have this image here, so you could pick any part of that, or just feel for you, what does your shoulder feel like? And then start to do just a little movement. I'm going to not demonstrate to you, so just do a little movement where you lift that shoulder a little bit up, and then you set it back down to where it rests easily. So you're going to do this movement a few times. You're just going to lift the shoulder a little bit and then let it go back to where it just ends up. Now, is there a way that you could do that movement of lifting your shoulder and also let your left arm be kind of relaxed? Like, could you lift the shoulder and see, maybe you have to find a different place for your arm to rest. And then you kind of just set the shoulder back down. Good. Now, as you're lifting your shoulder, we're going to add a little movement. So you're going to lift the shoulder, and then you're also going to take your left ear a little bit towards your left shoulder as it's coming up. So the shoulder comes up a little bit, the ear goes over towards the shoulder, and then the shoulder goes down to where it started, and the head goes back to where it started. Yeah, I'm going to leave a little space because you're just doing a little movement. It's like, it doesn't really matter if you're doing it right even. You're just kind of feeling like, oh, what does that feel like if I lift my shoulder a little bit and go back down? Okay, now just wait, just pause for a moment. And just go inside yourself and see, does your left shoulder, the one you've been lifting, does that feel any different than it did just a few minutes ago? Does it feel, and it's okay if the answer is no, no problem, but just ask yourself, did doing those little movements make any difference to how my shoulder feels?
Feels lower and more relaxed.
Feels lower and more relaxed. Cool. No pressure for anybody to report, but just tell. I ask a lot of questions in classes, and there's always the question like, do you want me to answer that out loud? And I'm usually like, oh, I should have said that. Because the important thing is for you to feel a difference, if you do. Okay, so now do a movement where you move your shoulder a little bit down. So if you move your shoulder a little bit down, do your ribs move at all? Yeah. Could you do that movement in a way that your arm is relaxed and maybe your ribs are relaxed? Could you soften anything in your abdomen when you're doing it? Good. Okay, now move your shoulder a little bit forward in space. So forward means, you know what forward means. But if you feel it, are you really moving it forward? Does it go straight forward, or does it go forward and a little bit up? Does it go forward and a little bit down? People are going to have different answers for this, which is interesting, because this is the realm of our habits. I think, oh, I'm going to move my shoulder, and then my habits kick in, and it's like, okay, we know what that means. We're going to move your shoulder. But when you start to ask questions about it, you're like, well, am I doing what I think I'm doing, or am I just doing the habitual thing? So now move your shoulder a little bit forward, and move your head a little bit so your chin goes a little bit towards your shoulder. And then they go back to where they started. So your chin goes a little towards the shoulder goes a little towards the chin, and then they go back. So can you do that and let your ribs kind of be soft? You're smiling.
No, I can't.
Yeah, we ask really annoying questions too. It's like, oh, try it like this. You're like, oh my God, if only. Okay, now leave your head just neutral. So let's see, what happens if you think of your head, but you don't have any specific instruction for your head? If you move your shoulder, does your head move either one way or the other? Does your head stay totally still? Good question. Okay, now there's one more direction. So Now, can you take your shoulder backward? And this one, for most people, it's not straight back. It's like back and down, or it's back and up, or there's some kind of combination of things. Good, so now we've done 4 different directions, right? So we're gonna put those together. You're gonna make a little circle with your shoulder. So let's start by taking the shoulder up maybe, and then forward, and then down, and then back. Okay, now just do it a little bit more slowly. Be a little bit less ambitious. Maybe make it a little bit smaller, actually. This doesn't need to be a big movement. You could just go like a little circle. And see if you can do it, but stay relaxed in the rest of yourself. So that means you're gonna have to pay attention to the shoulder doing a circle, but also, are you breathing when you're doing that? No, you're holding your breath. So that's a habit. Oh, I gotta try really hard. I'm gonna hold my breath, and that's gonna help. So just go really slowly, and then change the direction of the circle. Yes. Good. Okay, so now just pause again, just rest. And again, just go inside a little bit and just feel for yourself. Does your left shoulder feel different than it did before? Does it feel different than the right shoulder that you didn't work with explicitly? There are some words that would maybe suggest themselves, like maybe it's more relaxed, maybe it's lower, maybe there's just more detail there. Maybe there's some description you have that I'm not saying. So you have an inner experience of some difference. Does any other part of the left side of you feel affected? Like, does your left leg feel different than your right leg? Does the left side of your back feel different than the right side of your back? So there's kind of I'm seeing some people nod. So sometimes there's kind of a global response, even though you're working locally. So I titled this The Feeling of Inclusion. I wonder what I was thinking at that point when I titled it that. It's interesting. So that's kind of a taste of what an awareness through movement class is like, a group class. We're giving verbal instructions so that you feel guided through a series of movements that hopefully has some effect on how you feel. Hopefully you feel a little bit more relaxed, a little more grounded, a little bit more in touch with yourself. So did you notice how there wasn't a lot of force in that? That it was more kind of experimental, do a few trials, make a couple little errors, and then arrive at something that's a little bit more kind of feels like more at home in yourself. So with new neural connections or new learning, our perspective is that slow and soft and smooth is actually way more conducive to learning than hard and fast and big. So that's what we're trying to say with this slide. Neurons can't really be forced. We're looking more about like nurturing. And apparently there's a YouTube video where you can actually watch neurons connecting, which is, I don't know, that sounds interesting. Okay, so here's a really weird photo. This guy has really big hands, really big lips, kind of a small head. His arms are kind of like little sticks. So this is scientists tell us at least that this is how our brains imagine our bodies based on how much sensitivity is in certain places and how much we use certain things. So we use our hands a lot more than we use our arms to move our hands, but we don't think about this part as much as we have like, oh my God, my hands are huge. And lips, we're eating all the time, we're talking all the time. So this is the self-image, right? This is the thing that guides how we use ourselves, but isn't the same as our physical self, right? Like, interestingly, I would say that you just changed your self-image by doing those little shoulder circles, right? You had an experience where you're like, oh, now this part of me, maybe my arm feels longer, or I feel a little bit like there's more space on this side. So what we're trying to do with neuroplasticity and learning is we're trying to affect the self-image. That goes for adults and the kids, because the kids have very specific self-images based on whatever brain injury they had or whatever situation they're in. So we're kind of just assuming that it doesn't look like this, but every one of us has something that's kind of like distorted or like a weird shape, or like, you know, one side is really different than the other side because we just, you know, we're right-handed or we're left-handed. So this is kind of like the map that we have of ourselves. And in Feldenkrais, what we're trying to do is use movement to kind of affect the map that we have of our bodies and the maps that the kids have of their bodies and themselves. This is nerdy. Maybe we'll skip that one. So I guess what I'd like to do now is maybe I'll just work with Arya a little bit so you guys can see and feel the vibe of what the work is like. And then I'll talk some more after that. Does anybody have questions at this point or comments or anything before we do another thing? Okay. So think about willpower again. Like, okay, I'm not saying you should be doing this all the time. Like, I know that everybody has a life and sometimes you just need to like get up and go to the grocery store or something. So I'm not saying like, you have to always pick up your kid like this, but I'm saying, I'm talking really loud, really close to her, so I'm thinking like, oh, sorry, I'm kind of yelling. But I'm saying when you pick somebody up, it's a chance to kind of feel the quality of the way that you're doing it. So instead of just being like, I'm gonna just yank her and put her on the table, I'm kind of like, hello. And then maybe I'll stop talking for a little bit. Hi. So I might not even get her out of the chair, actually, is what I'm starting to think, because as soon as I connect with her here, I feel her kind of engaging with me. It's a conversation that's already happening. I feel the way that, you know, my thumb is here for her hand, so she's kind of pulling it, and we're already kind of communicating. Hi. Hi. So we were just moving the left shoulder, right? So maybe I use that as an idea. Like, oh, she has a left shoulder. Like, what if I just hang out there? And so I said to you, like, okay, feel your left shoulder when we're starting. What does it feel like to you? So I can just, you know, using my hand, kind of hang out here.
If you want to move her to the center, you can.
Ah, yeah, okay. Sorry. She has wheels. That's very helpful. Hi. So that's worth saying too, is like when I have the intention to pick her up, as soon as I kind of like gird myself, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hoist her up. I can feel that she has a response to that, which is probably her habitual response to being picked up, right? So a lot of times what I'm doing in this work is just watching my own kind of habits, the way that I habitually interact, and then I'm kind of slowing it down to try to feel like, do I have to do it that way? Is there some other way I could do it that's like a little bit softer, a little bit easier? Hi. Whoa. We're not the only people in this room. Hi. That's okay. You heard that. Hi. Okay, sorry, I'm getting in the zone. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a whole room. So, you think that's funny? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so I know I could just keep going because it's very interesting to me what's happening between us, but maybe I'll just stop and we could just talk about just that small amount of stuff. So when there was a sound, she got kind of surprised and kind of went into, that's a habit. Whoa, God, like, you know. And I didn't want to take that away from her. I didn't want to be like, hey, get your head back over here. We're doing this demonstration. But I did see that she was over there. So I just put my hand on her face and kind of hung out over there. And then I could feel her process of kind of coming back from that, wherever she went. I could feel like at some point something kind of softened in her neck and in her chest, and she was like, oh. And then there was like a little bit of play so I could kind of bring her head back to the middle, but then I went back to where it was and said, oh, but this is where you did go, and now you can come back here. And you can feel like her whole chest kind of softens, the breathing softens. And then I'm thinking back to like, oh, I thought I was just going to pick her up. And I'm like, no, actually what needs to happen right now is just, we can just be here. We can just explore right here. And that will be very meaningful for her. So, hi. So lessons are typically like 45 minutes long, and that gives us the time and the space to really be in the moment instead of being like, okay, we need to get through all the reps of this thing, and then we need to go do that thing, and then we need to go over here. The way that I work is pretty improvisational in the sense that I really want to see like what is emergent, like what's happening in the moment. And then Erin and I also like to work in an intensive format, doing like 2 lessons a day, maybe 3 days in a row or 5 days in a row, so that we can start to build on the work that we're doing. So a lesson will kind of, a lesson will usually expose some kind of place where the kid is growing, and you can say like, oh, cool, I feel like based on where they are right now, this next step might be possible. So we do a lot of little variations that are kind of preparations for the next developmental thing that could happen. And we're always working in these kind of sensitive ways. They don't always have to be small, but they always are sensitive to where the kid is, what feels possible, and what they're going to be able to accept. Because again, going back to the skill power versus the willpower thing, the most important thing is to give them an experience that's new that they can start to integrate for themselves. So not something that's so new that it's like, whoa, but I have no place to put that. We're looking for something that's new that they can kind of like fold into their sense of themselves that's kind of developing. Okay, sorry, I wish I could do more, but I'm going to keep talking. But look, before I go, I'll just say, like, if I were going to keep going with her, I would be interested in, like, what can I do with her legs? Like, if I want to bend this leg a little bit, I move it just a little bit. That's all I'm looking for, and then I kind of feel how she goes back. Oh. And I've worked with Arya before, so I know I have lots of ideas for if she were lying here, but okay, I'm going to let you get off the stage. Not that you ever asked to be on it. Okay, so I don't know. Was that interesting? Do people have questions or comments about that? Or like, he's not doing anything. Like, what is this?
I just want to say it was so beautiful to see the interaction between.
I think a lot of times it's really helpful for you as people working with kids to have an experience like doing the little shoulder thing and feeling how big of a difference can come from something really small. Because that's the thing I see with all these kids is like, it doesn't have to be big. And it's actually easier for them to appreciate it and to engage with you when you stay in a realm that's really like understandable for them or like doable. That doesn't make them feel like, oh fuck, I can't do that. I'm sorry to swear, but like, it probably feels like that to them on some level. It's probably like, like this thing that I know because I've experienced it so much is like, I can't do that. And that doesn't feel good. So I want to fold this into this empowerment idea. So we're trying to help the kids learn stuff. But I think it's really key for us to remember that for us to help them learn, we also have to learn what it feels like to work with ourselves in a way that feels respectful, that feels comfortable, that feels like it actually makes a difference to us. The way that we can help them is actually by learning ourselves what it feels like to work with ourselves in a way that feels sustainable, feels soft. Like, wouldn't it be great if you could interact with yourself in a way that made you cry? Where you're like, oh my God, I'm being like so connected to myself. Yeah, I know, there are a lot of ways that could go. That might not be a great example. A good, compassionate, softened crying. No. Anyway, I'm not sure if I made that point, but I'll move on. Okay, yeah, this is another idea. So the skeleton, if you do Feldenkrais stuff, you're going to hear practitioners talk about the skeleton a lot. We have this thing, we think that the skeleton is very important. And the reason we think that is the skeleton is something for the brain to look for that isn't associated with trying too hard. Like, the muscles are the things that move the skeleton, right? Like, the only way we can move the skeleton is because we have muscles that like pull on one part or don't pull on that same part. But the skeleton itself is this really amazing structural thing that if we can really depend on it, can make our lives feel really easy. So like, if you think about people who are really good at dancing, when you see them like dancing and it looks super easy, it's just like effortless, it's because they're only using as much muscular effort as they need to do the thing that they want to do, but they're not using more. So we like to do the skeleton because it's this place where you can ask that kind of question about like, okay, I'm going to move my shoulder up, and then I'm going to move it forward and then down and then back. So the skeleton is the place where you can start to ask these kind of specific questions of like, what direction is that? Oh, if I move that bone, that's connected to this bone. So that means if my collarbone has to move, if my shoulder is going to move, or my scapula has to move if my shoulder is going to move. So this is a way that we have, and we use it when we're working with the kids too, to kind of get like an ideal map. Okay, we talked about the weird image guy, the self-image, if it's all distorted. We all have a distorted self-image. But if you think in terms of the skeleton, you can start to think about what would be the ideal way to do that. None of us are perfect, but if I were a little more perfect, like what might that be? Just in like, if you had a skeleton that didn't have any muscles on it, like what would that be able to do? It'd be able to go in every single direction, like totally easily, right? So anyway, this is kind of like planting a seed for like future Feldenkrais things, where if you hear somebody talking about like skeletal awareness, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about like how to make things easier by depending on a deeper structure that, deeper structure, deeper part of yourself. Okay, so this is kind of the beginning of the end of the talk. So you can all breathe easily knowing this will soon be over. I want to end by just talking about that quality of touch that we were seeing when I was working with Arya. That's the thing that I think is going to lead to empowering her more and empowering us more as people are working with these kids, is like focusing on the quality of your connection instead of the quantity. In terms of like range of movement, or like we want to be able to get her walking right away, or like it doesn't have to be big. Again, it can be very small, it can be very soft. If we're focused more on being conversational and present, trying to have like pleasant sensations, those are the kinds of things that are going to wake these kids up to themselves. So, trying to think what else to say. Yeah, so maybe the only kind of quantity that we want is we want a whole range of movement things to be able to happen for these kids. So we do a lot of variations, we work in a lot of different positions, but we're always looking for like the quality. I guess I'm just going to leave it there. We're always prioritizing the quality.
Do you believe repetition is valuable, or do you want to be doing different things all the time?
Good. We'll just go into the question and answer portion of this presentation. No, it's good. No, this is great, because if Erin were here, this is kind of the subject of this really great resource she has. It's an ebook that's all about these 7 steps for quality touch. So I'll leave them up here. It's great, and I think if you don't have it yet, you all should get this little ebook that Erin has. And recommended reading. This is a QR code for the ebook. And then before I answer your question, I'll just point out, like I was saying earlier, that, Feldenkrais was a guy, and he was the teacher of Anat Banyel, so she has this great book. These are all really good books that are about more of these ideas, in case you're looking for more places to kind of get into this. This person, Hava, who does Child Space, is also one of the students of Feldenkrais. Neuro Horizons Primer is by Sylvia Shordyke. She's one of Anat's students. She's in Northern California. She's doing really great trainings for parents and other people, but people who specifically want to work with kids. She's offering these really great trainings. I actually did this training in Northern California, and she does amazing work with kids. She's been doing it for a long time, so I recommend checking her out for sure. So now back to your question about repetition. There are different ways to do repetition. If you're doing repetition because you are trying to do 10 reps and you don't care how you're doing them, that's different than doing something and being like, oh my God, that felt really good. I want to do that again, right? So there's kind of a compulsive repetition, which would be like a willpower repetition. But then there's this, when you're developing like a skill power, there's a desire to repeat. And a lot of times what's really exciting is if you do a session with a kid and you kind of introduce a new thing and you do it in such a way that it kind of lands with them and they're like, oh, what was that? And then you hear from the parents the next day, they're like, sometimes they're like, oh, he was doing that. Like, I saw him doing that on his own. Another situation that can happen is you do a lesson and it's a non-linear thing, but the parent's like, oh, all of a sudden she's doing this thing that we've never seen her do before, and it's really exciting. And you see the kid just doing it because it's their thing. And it's like that for us too. When we figure out something new that we like, we're like, yeah, I want to go do that because it feels good. So that's an answer. Yeah, any other questions for me? Yeah.
How do you find where like traditional PTs take to this sort of method? Like, are they often open to it? Because Addie doesn't have, my daughter doesn't have access to something like this. You're like where we are, but she gets PT through school. So I'm just curious, like, if there's a way to sort of integrate it or introduce it to her PT that might make her open to trying something like this with her.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have a lot of experience with PTs because I came up through this, which is like very alternative to the whole PT route, I was just recently working with a kid where the dad was like, hey, can I invite these PT, I think they were PTs, they might have been OTs. But anyway, 2 people watched the session and they had a response that was kind of similar to what you were describing, where they were afterwards, they were like, wow, like you guys were really dancing. Like that was, and so what I could tell from that is that it made an impression on them, and it also seemed like kind of foreign to them, or they were kind of like, But, and I also saw gears turning of like, oh, how could I do that? Which was very encouraging because it's like, good, yeah, we want more of this kind of emphasis on quality. And I think that the systems that they're in don't lend themselves to this. And I think the people for whom it really clicks will go out and kind of search out more opportunities to learn. The other thing is, when people see this and then they're like, oh, I'm gonna take that. First of all, I have the belief that it comes from when I was a musician, but it's like, if you hear it, you can have it. Like if you can really hear or see or understand what's going on, and then you can go do it, like by all means, like steal it. I'm totally happy for that to happen. And the way that I learned how to work like that is by working with myself on the floor for a long time. Just feel like, oh, I don't want to coerce myself. I don't want to contradict myself. That takes some serious work. So I'm saying you can do that with your kids when you're picking them up. And I'm also saying it's not like, it's kind of like what Dr. P said. It's, you kind of have to show up and do the work. It's really a skill to develop the ability to connect with yourself in a way that allows you to connect with other people in this way that has this specific quality to it. So that's a long way of saying like, yeah, PTs should do this, and doing this oftentimes means like getting really serious about like looking inside yourself and doing the work for yourself so that you can do it with other people. And usually that comes through like doing a training program. So yeah, that's an answer. Yeah.
That was going to be kind of my question. You were kind of answering it, but I want to go a little bit more into it. So we've done both ABM and MNRI. The reason that we stuck more with MNRI was Annette Benoit was very big on, you don't do therapy on your child.
Yeah.
Therapists do. MNRI was more, we're going to teach you how to do the work at home.
Yeah.
How does that fall? Will the practitioners go over things with you on, you can be doing this to interact better with your child so that they can get more movement at home, or is it more hands-off for the parent?
I can only answer for myself, like, because there's not really like a Feldenkrais dogma, which is just a way of saying like different practitioners have different ways of working with the kids and with the parents. So what my thing is like, if I were working with a kid and the parent was like, hey, what can I do at home? I would look at the kid and I would also look at the parent and be like, okay, well, what seems possible given what I see about this relationship? And it would really be customized to that specific situation, because I can imagine telling a certain kind of parent, like, okay, just do this. And then the parent's just gonna like, kind of robotically, like just, like that's one possibility. Yeah. Or the parent could be super sensitive and I don't even think to like suggest anything, and it's a big mistake on my part because the parent could be doing something with the kid that's like amazing, and I just didn't see the potential for that to happen. So this is, I don't know, I'm kind of not answering, but I'm saying Yeah, that's what I'm
That
saying.
makes sense. And the reason I wanted to come to this is that we were at an MRI conference with how do you pronounce it again?
Feldenkrais
Feldenkrais.
rhymes with nice.
Feldenkrais. Yeah, March rhymes with March. I can remember. Feldenkrais. And there was a practitioner there who was doing MRI, but she was working on the parents.
Yeah,
And when she started with me with MRI, she's like, no, she's also a Feldenkrais practice. She goes, no, you need more of this. And she worked with me with that. And I mean, it was amazing
Yeah.
how I felt afterwards. And so
Yeah.
I really like that for him. But also everything we do, we pay out of pocket for. So
Yeah.
learning some of the techniques at home are very important for us so that we're
Yeah,
not always going to a practitioner.
yeah, for sure. I think what's in the story that I just want to highlight is that you got some of the work and you know what it feels like, and that's you were empowered yourself.
I love how she just knew. She was like, no, you don't need this MRI. You need this over here for
Yeah.
some trauma release or something, is what she just, and I didn't tell her anything.
Yeah.
She was just like, no, you need this over here. So
And she knew based on her own experience of herself. I'm sure that's how she knew. So she's paying it forward. She's like, okay, I did this work to know myself in this way, so I can see something in you. So I'm going to help you a little bit.
Yeah.
Then you feel that, and you're kind of like, oh, wow, that was meaningful. And that makes the chances a little bit higher that you could also do that for your kids, where you're like, I know what that feels like, and I know enough to help this other person feel something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's what we're looking to do, is just grow. Okay, maybe I'll end with this great quote from Feldenkrais, which is, he said, I'm going to be your last teacher, not because I'm the best teacher, but because what I'm teaching you is how to learn. And when you learn what it feels like to be learning stuff, you're going to realize there aren't really teachers. There are people learning, and then there are people who have learned enough to kind of help other people start learning. So this is the superpower. This is like why it's about empowerment, is when you know what learning feels like, you can help other people also feel it. So we'll just stop there. So thank you all.